All right, everyone. We start off today talking about Alvin Bragg's lawfare, basically against Jimjordan. This is to block a congressional investigation of Alvin Bragg's triggered indictment of Donald Trump and the investigation there. I'm seeing some responses online that are legally wonky, like, well, Alvin Bragg is a member of the judiciary. Congress has no control over what he does. They're not allowed to investigate him. I would like to point out Congress can investigate pretty much anything. They can't investigate an executive in specifically executive function. They can't investigate a judiciary member specifically with regards to judicial proceedings. Alvin Bragg is not a judge. This is why they were allowed to do J6. The J6 committee was not unconstitutional. It was just stupid and a kangaroo court. But it was never actually unconstitutional for the investigation to take place. Why? They weren't investigating Donald Trump in so far as he did something in specifically executive capacity. They were investigating him for, well, he caused an insurrection. Well, that's not his chief executive. That's supposedly he made a speech that caused a bunch of people to go haywire. It never actually happened, but that was pertinent to something that was outside of actual executive function. With Alvin Bragg, what they're looking into is the DA of Manhattan. Not a judge. He's an elected official that represents Manhattan in the legal sense. And he's one of a number of attorneys that the city has. That doesn't rise to the standard, especially since this is not a judicial function he's involved in. Yes, he convened a grand jury. He himself, in his own comings and goings, even in a legal sense, are absolutely pertinent to congressional overview. Now, that doesn't mean that Congress can drag him kicking and screaming before to testify. It doesn't mean that they can impede the proceedings themselves. They can't impugn upon the case itself at the congressional level. That would be interfering with the judicial function. But they can investigate Alvin Bragg. They can separately say, look, we think he's doing shoddy shit, maybe exculpatory evidence was wrongfully withheld, etc., etc. I would point out that what they're doing is attempting to help out a private citizen right now. If Trump were currently in office, it would probably be difficult for them to pass the smell test as far as their investigation. So now, Alvin Bragg has gotten the bright idea to sue Jimjordan, actually, to try to block this congressional investigation from continuing. All they're hoping to do is slow down Congress with this frivolous lawsuit and try to prevent the disclosure of additional information pertinent to the indictment case against Trump to the public. Alvin Bragg right now is not doing this in a vacuum because he feels, hey, no, there's nothing wrong with this case. I'm clearly doing nothing wrong. My charges will hold up. Everything's hunky-dory. If that were the case, he'd tell Jimjordan to go pound sand, go touch grass, do something else, and not bother to impugn upon Congress because there would be no purpose to it. The best thing that could happen to Alvin Bragg's case is that Congress investigates in a partisan manner. It's the Republicans that are spearheading this from the House. They investigate and they find that Alvin Bragg didn't do anything wrong. Or they find only some circumstantial bullshit that really nobody in the public cares about with regards to legal decorum or something like that. And in the end, they do what J6 did, and they issue a non-response effectively saying, well, we still think that he's doing something wrong. It's really shoddy what's going on here, and shame on him for breaching precedent. Well, the American people already know that precedent was broken, almost 250 years of it. They already know, if they're not partisans, they have TDS or something, they already know that the fact that Trump was indicted and overcharged, again, 34 counts is abnormally high, is evidence that the case against him really is lackluster. There were liberal commentators admitting to this as well. That being said, Bragg would not take that particular step to try to shield his indictment and the ongoing investigation and case against Donald Trump unless he did not feel completely kosher about the possible end of those proceedings. I think this is Bragg's way effectively of tipping his hand accidentally and effectively admitting to people, hey, I don't know that any of these charges will actually hold up. I don't know that they're actually going to work. The judge, despite being partially Soros-backed and a Democrat with a daughter who worked literally for Biden and Kamala Harris, might not be able to find a jury that's willing to go forth with the charges and find him guilty. They may say there may be one conscientious objector there, so to speak. Somebody who understands jury nullification might sneak into the jury pool somehow and manage to get in there and then be like, ha ha ha, here's for you, Big Don. And Alvin Bragg knows this. He also knows that the judge, reluctant as though he'll be to do this, because again, he wants Trump to be charged with something and found guilty. It would make his career. It would allow him to write a multi-million copy-selling book, and he'd be famous, and all the liberals would love him, and he'd probably get, job advancement at some point. He'd be advanced up the bench. He'd be on the short list for Supreme Court justices under a future Dem administration, I assure you. He might have to come out and throw some of the charges. The judge may say, okay, 12 of these counts, I can see where Bragg's going here. The rest of them, I can't even allow them into court. He might have no choice. And that's another thing. If Congress investigates and gets all the nitty-gritty details that the public currently doesn't have, like specifically what payments are even pertinent to these charges and how they can possibly be dovetailed with what should be a federal case under our election laws, not a state or city level case at all. It shouldn't involve the state of New York. It should involve the federal government. And it looks an awful lot like a workaround and a reach around at the same time to me. Putting it in plain language that anyone can understand. This is really a circumvention of the fact that the DOJ decided not to charge Trump with the same thing. They looked at it and said there's no evidence, and they have more resources than Manhattan does, by the way, in the prosecutorial sense, and much more clout. But it was left up to Alvin Bragg, again, backed partially by George Soros and his judge friend, the Biden donor, with a daughter who worked for Kamala Harris for a while. Yeah, there is no unfairness in the U.S. judiciary system whatsoever. And Alvin Bragg's lawsuit will fail. Here's what he's hoping to do. He doesn't care if in the end his lawsuit against Jimjordan is tossed. What you do is you file a lawsuit, you're trying to shield your own separate legal case, and you draw it out. You endlessly draw it out. You push hearings back as far as possible. You slow walk it as much as possible. You're going to get presumptively some sort of sympathetic legal figures involved to try to cockblock Jimjordan further at some point. And the Democrats will turn it into a political circus and say, look, the GOP doesn't want legal closure. The GOP wouldn't be investigating via Congress if they didn't think Trump did something wrong that they had to fix it for him. Well, what's Alvin Bragg doing right now? That smacks of exactly the same sort of partisan spiel. And it is. I mean, the Republicans wouldn't be investigating Alvin Bragg if they had indicted Jimmy Carter, so we will be completely honest here. It'd be the other side of the bench doing that. Unfortunately for them, the GOP controls the House of Representatives right now, and even Kevin McCarthy himself isn't trying, who has TDS as well, is not trying to put the kibosh to these motions. No, they can't jail Alvin Bragg or anything like that, nor can Alvin Bragg's case. He's not going to successfully sue a sitting member of Congress over looking into his case and asking questions. It looks a little bit suspicious now, doesn't it? So it's basically an attempt to keep the witch hunt going. Of course, the first in-person hearing in that case won't be till December. Alvin Bragg wants to push it back probably even further with this legal suit and slow walk it. The whole idea is to hold it over Trump's head, make him look unelectable, trying to keep him from winning the primaries, which looks like it's not going to work. And then if he gets into the general, give a reason why honk honk, he totally got decimated in the 2024 election. That is what their primary motive right now. It's all about 2024. This has nothing to do with jailing evil orange con man or anything like that. Again, the case against him, the specific indictment, the specific charges, were passed up by the DOJ and originally by Alvin Bragg. He passed on them too. Then all of a sudden he started getting a bunch of funding and a bunch of lynch mob people demanding that he indict, demanding that he go forth with an investigation. He did a 180 and even ran for re-election on that platform. I will get Trump. Well, you got him indicted. Now you're trying to shield your indictment because the only reason that you pledged that in the first place was to win your election. By the way, liberals out there with TDS, you do realize that Alvin Bragg is all in this for himself, right? It's even post-ideological in some cases with these people. He's entirely self-serving. He got elected on the promise that he would get Trump. So he's just throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the wall and hoping something sticks. Obviously, he doesn't believe that that's likely to be the case because otherwise he would not need to shield his own investigation from outside congressional scrutiny. That's about all. Peace out.